This thing was a lot of fun. But after a tragic 24-month battle with marketing that developed into further inflamed, arrogant commercial complications that baffled all the doctors trying to save it, the Wii U tragically passed away this month. But what I'd like us all gathered here to remember instead is that the Wii U was built for just plain old dang old fun. It was built from the ground up for cheap laughs at the Miiverse, sleepover Smash nights, and Skype Splatoon squads. And that kind of fun has become a bit of an anomaly over the past 10 years of multitasking multimedia set-top box consoles dominating ever since the PS2 turned out to be a better DVD player than actual early DVD players. But fast forward about 10 years since those days to the uncomfortable moments of the Wii U's reveal and launch, and we have a console whose form factor and very concept were things juggling conflicting ideas, none of which could be easily pitched to either a hardcore or casual audience. For starters, you ever notice how you never really see a clean, crisp image of just the Wii U by itself to represent the console? Look at the box, look at the Google image results. You always have two kinda clunky looking rectangles of equipment there. They don't exactly form an elegant silhouette, do they? The console itself is married to a gamepad of almost equal size, which forms a first glance pitch that betrays how comfortable that gamepad actually is to hold and what utility it actually adds to the games themselves, while also not exactly clarifying that the gamepad's not just an accessory controller for the original Wii. That's the whole issue of that name, the Wii U. It's something that sounds like even less of a sequel than the Super Nintendo. The original Wii's success came from a massive 100 million strong market of a low-invested casual audience who'd never bother to understand the Wii U's actually pretty complicated concept, nor its just plain weird name. But back then, that wasn't the point, because the Wii U's initial reveal showed sizzle reels of hardcore titles. Third-party publishers, the big ones like Electronic Arts, THQ, Ubisoft, and Activision, were all on board with a lineup of mostly ports of last year's big hits. But they were going to be made for a system with better hardware, a better control scheme, and for what was about the second time in Nintendo's history, the promise of a better online system. As for the hardware, it was a semi-portable console, but not that portable. The gamepad's not going to work outside the console's house, and hell, in my case, it barely even makes it outside the room. Its launch lineup was geared towards a hardcore market, but it still used the kind of stigmatized name and imagery of the casual-oriented Wii. But the graphical capabilities this time meant that Nintendo had finally caught up with what the hardcore audience of 2012 would want. But it released just a year before the current gen knocked those graphics back down to what was normal half a decade earlier. And even though its dedicated features experimented and promoted a whole lot of that good old clean old Nintendo gimmicky fun, it also launched with the usual lineup of your set-top box multi-purpose entertainment apps, as well as a short-lived TV guide and remote service that was axed about 2 years in. So who was this for? What was it for? I don't know, it was just for cool dudes who want to play fun video games. I've been a reluctant fan of controller gimmicks, I think ever since I noticed that the PS3's controller looks exactly the same as the PS1's controller. And for what it's worth, I still think the Wii U's potential for controller gimmicks has made it home to some of the best original games of the past decade, as well as also some of the best ports. And it's all thanks to that gamepad. Before the reality of its less than 1 million sales set in after the first 2 months, all that third-party support hadn't yet dropped off like flies. While the thought of selling to a crowd close to those 100 million Wii owners was still a possibility, they were still willing to put up with Nintendo's unfriendly support habits, and they were making what were arguably the definitive versions of 2011 and 2012's multi-platform workhorses. The Wii U version of Human Revolution and Arkham City are regarded as their respective best versions, while for most ports just having a minimap or inventory screen on the gamepad is still saving the player time and clicks and boredom by sidestepping your conventional video game interfaces. On top of that, you have possibilities like motion aiming in Call of Duty, controlling separate drone camera angles with the gamepad in Splinter Cell, controlling entirely separate characters in Rayman Legends, and at the very least and most quantitative of improvements comes the Wii U version of Sonic All-Stars Racing, where you have split-screen multiplayer support for 5 players instead of 4, because one of them can use the gamepad. But beyond these examples of third-party ports comes the kind of lonely example of a third-party exclusive. Zombie U is unfortunately just about the only example I can think of a fully-length, fully-funded, high-tech AAA game being built from the ground up just for the Wii U. And noting just how neutered its multi-platform release 3 years later stands is a testament to how many new gameplay features just one new hardware feature can add. Zombie U is a game where enemies can sneak up on you while you have to look away from the screen to manage your inventory or scroll through the map. It's a game where your disorienting sense of direction and movement is only preserved by a minimap always being a glance below. It even has an asymmetrical local multiplayer mode where one player spawns in zombies on the gamepad's RTS top-down screen, while the other has to survive against them on the FPS TV screen, and this makes for an actually really tense and surprisingly deep little two-player competition. And having solid-ass controller gimmicks like that on top of just plain old solid-ass game design somehow failed to excite critics to the tune of it earning a 77 on Metacritic. I mean, sure, that's a number that's kinda close to 100, but it's also basically just under a C+ by the grade school logic of game review scores. It's comparable to Nintendo Land, a launch title pack-in minigame collection that is way, way, way better than any launch title pack-in minigame collection has any right to be. Nintendo Land is gilded with Nintendo polish, and it's an almost tragic testament to what new features and subgenres never got to be explored because of the Wii U's microscopic sales figures. It has some of the best Nintendo music of all time, but the real money shot here lies with the Luigi's Mansion ghost hunting game, which is going to stand as a timeless testament to how much potential the gamepad had for creating games you can't play elsewhere. Once again, with one player assuming a different role and playstyle on the gamepad from the other players on the TV screen. Also add to the fact that Nintendo Land had Wiimote compatibility to ensure that a whole bundle of friends can all play together so long as you have controllers from a whole generation ago lying around the house, and kablamzo. Instant fun. Except once again, for some reason, it got pretty lame review scores. I don't know if that means I overinflate the value of controller gimmicks, or if controller gimmicks just weren't as exciting 5 years ago, but there's a definite trend towards the cream of the crop, the top-rated, the top-selling Wii U games, being the ones that actually use the gamepad less. 2014 was when the Wii U's library really began to get fleshed out, with highly rated installments of Donkey Kong, Mario Kart, and Super Mario accompanying the definitive port of Bayonetta alongside a sequel, all of which led up to the big one. The system seller to end all system sellers. Super Smash Bros. 4, which embraced GameCube controller compatibility to ensure that 8 freaking friends, which is way too much, can all play together so long as you have controllers from 2 generations ago lying around the house. That 2014 lineup was the big test of the Wii U's longevity. With a lineup of system sellers like that still failing to sell systems, the curse was complete. There was no way it was going to recover. After already suffering months of content droughts, 2015 and 2016 saw the Wii U tragically mirror its Dreamcast comparisons and become kind of a niche machine for weird single-A oddball Japanese imports, like Devil's Third, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and Fatal Frame 5, alongside a few ambitious but underexposed indie titles like Fast Racing and affordable space adventures. We still had stuff to play those years, barely, but they were far below the quality of what we saw through 2014. I can't cover every beat, but Splatoon kind of felt like the last thrash of the crazy concert party that was the Wii U's set list. And that's just because the gamepad was only slightly utilized there, for clicking spawn points on a minimap and for fine-tuning your crosshair placement, which I still think is a damn good feature that more shooters should be using, but it precipitated the downfall and outright hatred of gamepad gimmicks during the release of Star Fox Zero, which I think was the final turning point of public opinion. High hopes got crushed by a near-universal derision of its control scheme, and Nintendo's insistence on designing games around controller gimmicks. That was about 6 months before Nintendo officially announced that Wii U production was ending, before the swan song, the last game Nintendo would make for the console. A Zelda sequel that, even after a revealed demo and 2 Zelda remakes made great use of the gamepad, released with the gamepad just being a blank space to keep parity with the other version. Despite being the supposed Wii U swan song, despite this game being the highest rated and perhaps final real game on the Wii U platform, any distinction of it specifically being a Wii U game is gone. For all the lofty reasons people are going to remember Breath of the Wild in the future, they're probably not going to remember it for the same reasons I spent paragraphs earlier remembering Zombie U and Nintendo Land, because those games hinted at the potential Wii U failed to tap into. And somehow, I feel like those are the games that are ultimately going to age better than ones that can be more easily ported, updated, and remastered onto other platforms. They're just not going to play the same elsewhere. And all of this is a brutal reminder of just how important mainstream accessibility is to Neo-Nintendo's focus on unique hardware. This time, that focus was their undoing rather than being their bread and butter. The Wii U failed to push units because of how inaccessible it was for normal people to unlock what could be the most accessible console of all time. A story which I feel like is summarized by the whole setup process. You got almost 90 minutes of elaborate profile creation and online updating that eventually leads to these massive 8-player Smash matches between people using 5 different controllers if they want. But more games like that didn't happen because the audience to support all that game dev work and all those accessory purchases was too small because no one wanted to make games for the damn thing, which wasn't helped by how Nintendo themselves didn't seem to want to make games for the damn thing. It's not like they couldn't. Thanks to all the controllers it supports, the Wii U had the infrastructure for a vast library of almost every Nintendo game ever to be played like the way they were meant to be played. You've got 2 screens and a touchpad with a stylus, so why the hell did they wait 2 years to start trickling out a small selection of DS games? For that matter, they didn't seem to want to do a lot of negotiating to bring the good ones over. Where's Elite Beat Agents? Where's Phoenix Wright? Where's The World Ends With You? To their credit, they did re-release a few of the good Wii games on the Wii U's eShop, but what kills me about that is that the Wii U has native backwards compatibility with the Wii, and the Wii had native backwards compatibility with the GameCube. You can play GameCube games on the Wii U with the fan-made homebrew ISO loader. This thing has backwards compatibility that goes back 2 generations. All Nintendo would have to do is make an official version of that, upload the disc images of old GameCube games and put them on the shop, but they didn't want to go to the trouble. Even though they did go to the trouble of making this fancy, totally unnecessary GameCube controller adapter that only one game uses! I can only suspect that all these plans they could have implemented were cut short, all because the Wii U's audience size was too small. And the audience size was too small because John Normie Doe, who shops at Walmart, would never get one anyway because Madden wasn't on it, because EA dropped support, because the audience was so small, because Nintendo never put out Super Bowl commercials or Jimmy Fallon hype demos, or launch it with a groundbreaking, super polished killer app, or even revealing it with informative press releases instead of rumors or leaks, or even having an attractive concept and cool name because trademarks like the Wii U, and New Super Mario Bros. U, and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U all sound about as exciting as Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. Notice how the Switch is just called the Switch, and that the flagship Mario platformer coming out for it isn't called New Super Mario Switcheroo? The Wii U was an uncomfortable hybrid of semi-portable dual-screen gaming with a dumb name, but a console that can play games in the bathroom or in bed is really not that far of a stretch from a console that can play games at the baggage claim or on a train. The Wii U will be sorely missed, but it will be survived by a loving family of other machines, I guess. Machines that actually tackle a lot of the same concepts. After all, the Switch is also a semi-portable living room party console with wacky controller gimmicks. It almost feels like they're just trying the Wii U concept again. But the problem with doing that during the Wii U years is that was a period where Nintendo suddenly became absolutely clueless about how to sell games. During a few glorious, wonderful years where they also got really damn good at making games.